So now it's been nearly 2 months since Hurricane Harvey struck Houston and shut down 25% of the nation's refining capacity, messed with pipelines that deliver energy around the U.S., and shuttered the critical shipping ports of Houston, Corpus Christi, and Port Arthur. So at the time, prices at the pump spiked, skyrocketed, because refineries couldn't come back. Well, they've worked to come back moment by moment, bit by bit, after getting knocked out by these multiple hurricanes. Time to bring in a guy who's right in the thick of this business, canary in the coal mine, or in this case, the oil field. Joining us now on a Fox Business exclusive, CEO of drilling services company Canary. And we're joined by Dan Eberhart. How does it look now, Dan?
Well, thank you for having me back. I think it looks a little bit better, but there's still definitely a lot of room to run to get back to where we were. So just to put it in perspective, the U.S. government released 5.3 million barrels of oil to help cover the refinery production shortage post Hurricane Harvey. The production, was off about 3.5 million barrels in terms of the refinery capacity post Hurricane Harvey, and to date, here we are 2 months later, only 1.5 million of that 3.5 million has come back so far.
True. And when we look at the price of gasoline, a year ago, it was more like, I want to say $2.23, right, per gallon. And that's sort of the retail price here. Now it's $2.46.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it depends a little bit on what state you're in, but yes.
Yeah, so we're looking at prices that are marginally higher here, but let's talk about the so-called imbalances, because we didn't have refining capacity for a while, so we didn't get gasoline. Then once they started up again, we had a little bit of a shortage of crude, because that started to go through the refining systems, correct? So are we rebalanced yet?
Yeah, well, I think the U.S. market and the global markets are rebalancing, and I think it's partially a hurricane story. But even bigger than that, it's a global supply story relating to the U.S. shale and the oil bust that started in 2014. I'll tell you that I think the markets have become more balanced. The U.S. stockpiles peaked in March at about 400, and it peaked in March and are down about 15% to 456 million barrels from the March high. So I think the drawing down the U.S. stockpile shows that the market is now more towards undersupplied than oversupplied, which is what caused oil to, the precipitous fall that happened in 2014 and 2015. So I think we're just entering an inflection point, and at a point where the market is undersupplied with crude.
Well, we've been talking about tax reform all day today because, of course, last night the door was open because Senate Republicans were able to pass a budget in some form that now has to be tweaked by the House and then back to the Senate. But putting that aside, what would tax reform mean for the oil and energy industry and companies like yourself?
Sure. Well, I think, for our industry specifically, I think the IDCs, the intangible drilling cost exemption, and us being able to deduct that as a capital expenditure is huge to keep the industry drilling and moving forward, to find new resources and new production to keep gasoline prices low. I also think that as part of the tax reform package, one of the things on the table is opening up ANWR, and I think that could potentially bring in up to $1 billion in new revenue during the first 10 years, and I think that could potentially be part of a way we pay for tax reform that lowers taxes. I also think, just as an average American, I think tax reform and tax simplicity could take some of the frictional costs out of the tax system and spur the economic growth. We had GDP growth of almost 8% after Reagan did the tax reform in 1984.
Definitely. Yeah.
So we haven't seen GDP growth rates anywhere near that in the recent future.
And of course, tax cuts done by President Kennedy worked very nicely. We'll watch and wait and see. Dan, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.